So then let's talk about when it doesn't turn over. So outside of the topicals, outside the fringe ones, let's talk about that fire flower. And you kind of mentioned like, you're in Happy Buyers, you're seeing that this new thing is not turning over within 30 days after you had this whole conversation. So what I want to first start off with is how and when are you communicating with the wholesaler in terms of how they can help and contribute to moving it over? Talk to me through that. And then I want to talk about how you've structured ways to make sure that you guys aren't left too much on the hook when you're coming back on that 30-day mark. So first start with like, talk me through that conversation, that evaluation process in terms of what happens when you're dealing with a situation like that.
Yeah, so initially when you're dealing with a situation like that, you typically want to be as transparent as possible. And what I do is I provide the statistics, I provide the analytics uh, behind the decision and the rationale, if the product is not moving. And then ultimately it's going back to the drawing boards and creating it's asking for a little bit more, right? It's, hey, what can you guys do in terms of marketing? What can you guys do in terms of bud tender incentives for my bud tenders to be able to push the products that you guys are offering at our locations, right? Because it's your job as the vendor to ensure that your guys' product is moving on our shelves. And so that's ultimately, what we do is we go back to the drawing boards, get additional marketing spend to ensure that the product has the visibility and it's being communicated to the community and the audience that they're trying to target. And then two, it's getting in-store marketing, whether it's displays, whether it's having a field marketing rep within the store, kind of just talking to the customers and educating them. So there's definitely lines of defense before it comes to cutting a product that we want to ensure is being hit, where if a company's not coming in too hot with all of these strategies, then it's like, hey, what can you guys do with the marketing side? What can you guys do here? And then ultimately just creating a solid game plan to ensure that the brand is going to move on our shelves.
And how many days in, if you're trying to turn it over within 30 and you're looking in, you're seeing it's still not turning within 30, the run rate's dropping, right? It's starting to show up into predicted days on hand is getting into the 90s, into the hundreds. At what point in time are you making that kind of first order decision? How many days into it coming onto the shelf normally?
I mean, so it's very tough to evaluate that. It's not tough. So I like to give brands a quarter for
Okay.
performance. That's where I'm at. And then it's like, if I'm not seeing the indicators and say, it's a very hot brand and it's something that's moving with velocity at every other location, but it's not working for us, I need to figure out like, okay, this brand is performing, top 5 in the state. How do we ensure that it's moving on our shelves? So it's like, how can we communicate to our customers that this is something that's really good, it's a solid product, and it's priced, accordingly, and how do we, basically it's just working with the vendor and ensuring that we're coming up with a solid game plan to ensure that their product's going to move. That's really what it is. And so within that first 30 days, if it's not moving within the first 2 weeks, the first 21 days, then it's ultimately saying, hey guys, what you guys have isn't working for us.
Yeah.
It's not working.
Yeah.
What can we do? And
Yeah.
that's kind of how those conversations are going, because it's like, there's 1,000 different brands, or not 1,000, but there's tons of brands in the market that are chomping at the bits to get their opportunity on someone's shelf. So it's like, at the end of the day, you got to figure out what's working for us. And if it doesn't, if you don't figure that out in time, then it's like, okay, well, we may need to look elsewhere.
Got it.
Mhm.
And then how do you protect yourselves from holding the bag at the end of the day?
How do we protect ourselves? What'd you say?
In terms of like when a brand new thing comes in and they're still coming back net 30 and they're saying, well, we need to get paid back now, right? How are you structuring it so that you can protect yourselves from
Yeah, and
exposure?
that kind of goes into the margin protection aspect of things too, though. So it's like, that's one thing that we do within the Arizona market to ensure that we are protected at the end of the day. So it's like, every unit that we're moving, we are protected on the back end at the end of the month to ensure that we're making the profit that we need. And so ultimately, if a brand, if we haven't turned over their product within 30 days, then we're going back to them and we're trying to figure out like, hey, we're not going to get you, we're not going to get an additional order going unless, we figure something out.
Yeah.
That's ultimately how we're protecting ourselves, is not over ordering on the products and just ensuring that we're selling through it completely.
Yeah. Yeah. Got
And,
it.
we typically don't let things get to that point. So initially, I've never came across an issue where it's like, product not turning over within the first 30 days, because we're ordering accordingly. Like I said, especially using, your guys' software and, having processes in place that ensure that we're not over ordering with, initial brands that are new to Ponderosa locations.